Today I'm going to be talking about the hierarchy of needs that was introduced by Abraham Maslow and how I use that pyramid in my daily life as a bit of a GPS to tell me where I've been, where I am, and where I'm going. So please stick around. So first of all, if this is your first time to this channel, I want to welcome you. My name is David. This is David Copes. I am doing this channel to document my journey, my mental health journey, and hopefully give something to others that are maybe going through something similar that they can find beneficial and maybe help them through some of the tough times that I've been able to get through. So first things first, I know I often talk about how things are often very simple, but that doesn't mean they're easy. And this kind of lesson that I've learned is kind of the epitome of that. I realize that we are all in situations that are beyond our control, and we're often in situations where the deck is stacked against us. Having said that, this pyramid, this hierarchy of needs is still true. And even though me saying these things and it sounding very simple, I realize, and I want you to realize, that it may not always be so simple, even though these things may sound easy. However, you can use this as a blueprint for your life, much as I have. So let's get started. So one of the reasons that this hierarchy of needs is important, or at least why I chose to commit one whole episode to this, is because our language, especially in English at least, has evolved, maybe hyperbolically, to use the word need when we really should be saying want. And this is something that I'm definitely working on. I know that when I, for instance, want a Lego set, I will often say I need to get this set or I need to do these things. And anytime they're referring to something material, like a phone or some shoes or, something that doesn't really add to the necessity of our life, or is more of considered like a luxury, we really shouldn't use the word need, because our brains do not filter what they hear as true or not true, or decide or differentiate between who said it. They just accept the words. Our brain accepts the words that it hears. And so when it hears, I need this material object, it is going to react that way until you get that object. And so in order to prevent yourself from having undue anxiety, one of the small things that you can do is watch your language. And so this is why self-talk is so important for somebody who's struggling with weight issues. If they continually repeat the fact that they're fat, their brain only hears somebody calling them fat, disregarding the fact that you said it yourself. And so it is going to, negative talk and using the wrong word in this case, is going to affect your experience as you live your life. Now, your experience oftentimes is going to affect your mood. And the way that you experience things is your thoughts, right? And so it's going to affect your feelings. And then that is going to affect your actions. And so this is one of those little tweaks that can actually make a big difference. I know in my case specifically, I often would, say that I was a loser or that I wasn't good at things or fill in the blank, right? And I wasn't able to meet my goals, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I stopped saying those things and in fact started replacing them with positive things that I and I think everybody have part of their identity. There are things we are good at, and if you can take ownership of those things instead of the negative things, which we all also have, that can be very powerful. So now, as far as the hierarchy of needs, this is basically a pyramid, and with the bottom two are what they would call our, I guess, like our survival needs, right? And so it's really the bare minimum. And without these bottom two, there's really no point in going up. And you'll see what I'm saying very quickly. So the first level is your physiological needs. Physiological being your psychological needs and your biological needs, right? Those two together. And so these are all of the things that you need, your basic needs for survival. So food and water, shelter, warmth, and rest. Those are the main things. And so if you find yourself in need of one of these things, before you move up the pyramid and worry about self-esteem, for example, which is here in the pyramid as well, you need to get your water, you need to get your rest, you need to get your food, etc., etc. And so from that level, once you have those basic needs, your next level up is your safety needs. And this includes physical attacks, emotional attacks or abuse, financial security, economic safety, I guess, and just an overall safety. When we're talking to refugees or hearing about refugees, they're often in a situation, whether there's a war or a genocide or criminality, that they're fleeing those situations, really not even knowing where they're going to land or what they're going to do. And it's because of this deep survival need that they have to feel safe. And we all have that. And one of the things that I know that I've dealt with is feeling unsafe as a child is a feeling that never really came to its own resolution as a child. And I carried that through into my adulthood when those threats were no longer there. And so people that have dealt with abuse may often understand what I'm talking about. And so even though the abuse has stopped, the trauma and the damage continues and sometimes gets worse depending on what you're focused on. And so sometimes this safety issue is unresolved and we may not realize this. And so this has to do with people, like I said, that have gone through abuse, post-traumatic stress, what have you. You have to be able to confront that. And some people will do this publicly or address their accusers. Or it is also a choice that you have to be able to look at the world around you objectively, understand that you're safe, and allow yourself to feel safe. And so if these are things that are currently happening, obviously that needs to be resolved. Otherwise, your whole hierarchy of needs is going to be out of whack. And so if you're in an abusive relationship, physically or emotionally, even if it's maybe your parents who are intrusive in some way or in some way not validating you, etc., some of that can be our choice in the way that we think of things, and then some of these things need to be addressed with the person. And not knowing anybody's situation, that's something that each of us has to decide on our own. I can say from personal experience, finances are one of those things that I've never really been good at. And so even in my life when I have made a lot of money, I wasn't good at saving, I wasn't good at paying the bills, etc. And it created a lot of stress in my life, a lot of unnecessary stress, if I'm honest. And so when I got married, my wife takes care of the bills and the finances. And that, I guess, moving of responsibility, or her taking that off of my shoulders, has freed me up in order to move up this hierarchy from these bottom two basically survival levels onto these next levels, which are considered kind of the growth levels. And so for my wife, I will always be grateful for that. So needless to say, if you have not had your needs met up to this point, there needs to be those cleared out and addressed before you can move up to the next level. Like I said, these are the bare basics. And so after your survival needs, now comes the belonging and the love needs. And with this belonging things, this is particularly important when you're a child. And it goes along with feeling safe. And there is a support system that is needed way more as a child than it is as an adult. Even though, just like the trauma that I mentioned before, lack of belonging and lack of love as a child can bleed into your adult life and affect things now, even if it's not accurate to your situation, right? And so that's something else that may need to be addressed. And so, like I said, if you're needing these other levels, then this is kind of extra. Now, as far as belonging to a group, this is one of the reasons that a lot of people in society, anyway, put such a high value on working. Because when you work, you have the option to look at that as your contribution to something bigger than yourself. Not only do you work in your community and serve for, work for a company and help this company run or a business, but that business contributes to the city or the state or the government, etc., etc. And so in the Western world especially, we are able to look at this world economy, and if we are working in one of these countries that is involved in trade internationally, we're a cog in a really big machine. And so that's one of the things that we all can look at. And like I've said before, I personally don't believe that any cog is more important than the other. I think a CEO, a captain of a ship, is really important. But if you don't have somebody looking out for icebergs, then that ship isn't going to get very far, right? And so I feel like every job is important. And it's your choice to feel that belonging. Now, in my case, there were many, many years where I couldn't work because of my mental health. And I found other ways to feel that sense of belonging. So I went to support groups. In my 20s, I was a musician. My friends, who I'm still friends with to this day, were musicians or are musicians. Today, I play Pokemon. And so I have a lot of friends that play Pokemon. I'm a mechanic. I have friends that are mechanics. And it goes on and on and on. And obviously, I have always got the love from my mom and my sisters. And now I'm married. And so when you aren't getting this need felt, or fulfilled, I should say, it's imperative that you ask for the things that you need. And so, for instance, with my wife, if I'm not feeling enough attention, I will ask for more time or to feel more connected in some way. With my parents or my mom and my sisters, I try to text them and try to see them when I can. With the pandemic that's been going on, I haven't been able to play Pokemon Go the way that I did, but I am still texting and messaging people. Same with my mechanic friends. And so this level is where you are going to start to feel value in your life. And so after you have this fulfilled, the next level is called the Esteem Needs. And so in the Esteem Needs, I do have a little bit of a, I don't know if you would call it a disagreement, but something that I kind of look at a little bit differently. And so in the Esteem Needs, according to Maslow, This has to do with how you feel about yourself and how others feel about you as well, and how you are respected or looked at in your environment. From my point of view, we don't actually know what other people are thinking. And so I would reword this as what we think about ourselves and what we think others think of us. And so in this particular slice of the pyramid, this is going to be about having skills, being respected, status, recognition, prestige. This can come because you have strength, mental strength, or physical strength, or you have commodities or talents. This can really be a lot of things. Ironically, I feel like in the final stage, this is less important, but I do think that this stage is important overall, because as you'll see later, we are constantly going to be growing and we won't be staying at that final stage. And so this esteem stage is very important. And most important is how we view ourselves. It is important to understand that you are not perfect, but you're always a work in progress. And all of these setbacks or challenges are actually opportunities for you to grow. And so in this level, when you have low self-esteem, you feel like you're not capable or are incompetent for the job that you have at hand. This is often where the imposter syndrome comes in, when you aren't having that met. And so that's probably something that I'm going to cover later in a future episode. Now, after you have had your self-esteem and esteem needs met, after that is the final stage, or at least in the original way that Maslow wrote it, the final stage in the original classic version of this pyramid is self-actualization. And so, simply put, this is when we reach our full potential. And really when we are our true selves. And so one way to look at this, and as I mentioned earlier, this is not a stage that you are going to reach and just stay at, but rather this is going to be your peaks in life. And so according to Maslow, not everybody even reaches this peak. And then those who do often fall down and have to climb back up and build back up. One way that I look at it is I look at it as graduation. You know, you finish this long journey of studying and learning, and it culminates in this graduation, and that is your peak, and then graduation's over. And if you want to get back to graduation, then you're going to have to go back to school and learn and do more work. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to start all the way over. Obviously, once you're self-actualized, you don't have to find food and water and shelter and warmth again. Any more than when you have a degree, you don't have to take those relevant classes that you've already taken over, right? And so, but you can still graduate again in another field or in a furthering of your education. And so one of the things that I think is important now that we've covered the pyramid of Maslow's needs is to understand also that there are many aspects of your life, and you may reach self-actualization or reach this peak performance in one aspect while neglecting other aspects. And I watched a video one time talking about Vincent Van Gogh and how he is one of the most brilliant artists, painters the world's ever seen. But also at the same time, simultaneously, his life was in tatters. And so this is no different than any of us. And you don't have to look very far to see, for instance, in our modern day, famous musicians who are famous and respected and rich. However, they often will be self-destructive or abusive or what have you. oftentimes, sometimes even killing themselves because other needs aren't met. When you watch documentaries about these individuals, they will often talk about how their fame created a sense of isolation and the inability to trust the people around them. And so this goes right back to the belonging, right? Even though you're famous and loved, right, you still don't have that feeling of intimacy. You know, that people actually know the inner parts of you, the good and the bad, right? The actual you. And so this is one of those little things that you can see. And it's not just with that. Another thing that's kind of unknown or not talked about a lot is that being self-actualized, reaching this peak, doesn't mean that you're going to be famous or going to be rich. I know when you are learning about this, you're often given examples of people that have been self-actualized, and they're going to give you names like Mahatma Gandhi and Viktor Frankl, and you know, these people that we all know about, or at least they have books written about them, etc., etc. But they're used as examples because those are people that we all kind of universally know about. This doesn't mean, though, that you have to obtain that kind of celebrity, right? And so that's also an important part of this. And so I hope you found this useful. As I said, I use this as a blueprint. When I'm feeling any kind of awkwardness or uneasiness or insecurity, I look at this pyramid and find out, where is my deficit? Where am I missing something? Why am I having these negative feelings? And I take it upon myself to try to correct that. And if it's the way that I feel that people are looking at me or thinking about me in my esteem, I kind of turn that inward and I try to look at my own self-esteem. If I'm not feeling connected, whether it's because my wife's busy or because I haven't seen my family in a while or my friends, I'll reach out and I will ask for that help as well. And so it's a good way at least to be a bit of a roadmap, just to see where you are and where you're going, and also where you've been and what are some things maybe that are unresolved in the past that need to be addressed now. So like I said, I hope that you found this helpful, and I will have another video out hopefully next week, and I hope to see you then. Thank you.